Every night, your wife locks herself in a room for 3 hours and refuses to tell you why. That's Olumide Adeleke's nightmare.
Some things, Olumide, are more important than your need for control. Some secrets protect people.
Protect them from what? Who are the sad people in the special room?
They are just neighbors, Olumide.
Mommy talks to the sad people in the special room.
Please, you have to let me out of here.
Picture this. You're worth $47 million. You have everything money can buy. But every night your wife locks herself in a room for 3 hours and refuses to tell you why. That's Olumide Adeleke's nightmare. And what he discovers behind that door will shake you to your core. Have you ever felt the slow burn of suspicion eating away at your trust? Have you watched someone you love become a stranger right before your eyes? Has paranoia ever consumed you so completely that you couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't think about anything else? Here's the problem. Olumide's wife, Funmilayo, has been locking herself in room 12 every single night at 9 p.m. for 8 months straight. No explanations, no discussions, just the sound of that lock clicking into place, sealing away secrets that could destroy everything. Drop a comment right now. Would you break down the door or keep waiting for answers? Because Olumide chose to wait, and that decision nearly cost him everything. The breaking point came when his 9-year-old daughter, Zainab, casually mentioned at breakfast that Mommy talks to the sad people in the special room. Sad people? What sad people? That night, Olumide stood outside the locked door with a crowbar, his hands shaking, his heart hammering against his ribs. He could hear voices inside, multiple voices, women's voices, some crying, some speaking in hushed, desperate tones. Then his phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Mr. Adeleke, before you break that door, check your email. Subject, the truth about room 12. Who was watching him right now? And what truth could possibly justify 8 months of locked doors and lies? Hit that subscribe button because this story gets darker before it gets light, and you need to see how a locked door became the key to unlocking buried truths that connected 5 lives across 2 countries, 3 tragedies, and 1 impossible choice. Now let me take you back to where it all began. Olumide Adeleke's Banana Island mansion gleamed like a trophy under the Lagos sun, all glass and marble and money. From his bedroom window, he could see the Atlantic Ocean stretching endlessly, the same view that cost him $12 million. But this morning, as he watched Funmilayo emerge from her 6 a.m. yoga session, looking radiant and unreachable, that view felt like a cage. 6 months ago, everything was perfect. His telecommunications empire, Adel Tech, had just opened its 50th store across West Africa. This Day Style magazine featured them as Nigeria's power couple, photographing their Banana Island home, their matching Range Rovers, their beautiful children. Funmilayo had designed their mansion herself, every architectural detail a testament to her genius. Their marriage was the kind people envied at country club gatherings. Then the locked door started. It began subtly. Funmilayo mentioning she needed a private office space for sensitive client projects. She converted the 3rd-floor guest room, installed a reinforced door with a deadbolt. Reasonable enough. Architects needed privacy for blueprints and client consultations. But architects don't lock doors at exactly 9 p.m. every single night. Architects don't refuse to let their husbands enter even once in 8 months. And architects certainly don't flinch when you knock. Or whisper, "Not now," in a voice tight with something that sounded like fear. Olumide stood in their ensuite bathroom, Expensive Italian tiles cool beneath his feet, staring at his reflection. At 42, he still looked like the hungry young man who'd built his first phone repair kiosk in Ikeja with borrowed capital. Same sharp jaw, same intense eyes. But now those eyes were bloodshot from sleepless nights, and his jaw clenched with suspicion that was eating him alive. His phone buzzed. A text from his mother. "Have you spoken to your wife about that room yet?" Even Iya Olumide knew. The entire household staff probably knew. His driver definitely knew. Olumide had caught him exchanging meaningful glances with the housekeeper whenever Funmilayo disappeared upstairs. What would you do if the person you trusted most became a locked door? Would you demand answers or respect their privacy? Comment below, because Olumide was about to make a choice that would haunt him. He heard Funmilayo moving in their walk-in closet, selecting one of her perfectly tailored dresses. She emerged looking like a vision, royal blue Ankara print that complemented her dark skin, gold jewelry catching the morning light. She caught his gaze in the mirror and smiled that smile that once made his heart race. Now it just made him nauseous. "Good morning, my love," she said, voice warm as honey. "You're up early?" "Couldn't sleep," he replied, watching her carefully. Again. Something flickered across her face. Guilt, fear, pity, before the smile returned. "You work too hard, Olumide. When was the last time you took a real break?" The deflection was smooth, practiced. She'd been doing this for months, redirecting every probing question, every concerned comment. She moved closer, placed a perfectly manicured hand on his chest. Once, that touch would have dissolved all his worries. Now it felt like manipulation. "What happens in that room, Funmi?" Her hand stilled. "We've discussed this." "No, you've dismissed this. There's a difference." "It's work, Olumide. Sensitive architectural projects require..." "Architects don't lock doors for 3 hours every night. Architects don't have mysterious packages delivered at midnight. Architects don't..." He stopped himself, but the damage was done. Her eyes narrowed. "You're having me watched?" "I'm trying to understand my own wife." The air between them crackled with tension. Funmilayo stepped back, adjusting her dress with sharp, angry movements. "You want to understand? Then trust me." "I did trust you. For 8 months, I trusted you. But trust requires some degree of transparency, and you've given me nothing but locked doors and secrets." She grabbed her designer handbag, keys jingling. At the bedroom door, she paused. "Some things, Olumide, are more important than your need for control. Some secrets protect people." "Protect them from what?" But she was already gone, heels clicking down the hallway, leaving him with that cryptic statement and the familiar sound of her car engine starting in the driveway below. Olumide's hands shook as he gripped the bathroom sink. The marble felt solid, real, unlike everything else in his life right now. His empire was built on innovation and calculated risks. But this was chaos he couldn't control, mystery he couldn't solve with money or connections. His phone buzzed again, this time a message from Tunde, his oldest friend from university. "Country club tonight. You look like you need whiskey and honesty." But Olumide had tried whiskey. He'd tried 3 different private investigators. He'd tried prayer. His mother insisted it was spiritual warfare. He'd tried everything except the one thing that terrified him most: breaking down that door. As the morning sun climbed higher, painting their expensive prison in gold, Olumide made a decision. Tonight, he would wait outside room 12. Tonight, He would listen carefully to every sound, every word. Tonight, he would finally understand what was worth more than their marriage. He had no idea that tonight, his 9-year-old daughter would say something that would shatter his entire world. Have you ever been so close to the truth that you could feel it breathing on your skin? Share below if you've experienced that terrifying moment right before everything changes. Breakfast, in the Adeleke household, usually resembled a carefully choreographed performance. Olumide and Funmilayo, at opposite ends of their imported mahogany dining table, their children, Zainab, 9, and Malik, 6, between them like human buffers. The housekeeper, Patience, served fresh akara and pap, while CNN Africa played softly on the mounted television. This morning felt different. Funmilayo's seat was empty. She'd left for a site inspection immediately after their bathroom confrontation. Olumide picked at his food, appetite destroyed by sleepless nights and mounting anxiety. "Daddy, you're not eating," Zainab observed, her bright eyes too perceptive for a child. "Just thinking, princess. About Mommy's special room?" Olumide's fork clattered against his plate. Patience froze mid-pour with the orange juice. Even Malik looked up from his tablet. "What do you know about Mommy's room, Zainab?" His daughter shrugged with that casual innocence children possess before they understand the weight of secrets. "I hear her sometimes when I go to the bathroom at night. She talks to the sad people." The world tilted. Sad people? Yeah. Ladies who cry a lot. Mommy tells them it's going to be okay. She
Mommy
uses her
talks to the
soft
sad
voice,
people in the
the one
special
she
room.
uses when Malik has nightmares.
Please, you have to let me out of here.
Olumide's heart hammered so hard he thought it might crack his ribs. "How many ladies, Zainab?" "I don't know. 3, maybe 4. They sound different. One lady has a voice like Auntie Ngozi's, you know, scratchy. Another one sounds younger, like my teacher." "And what do they talk about?" Zainab's face scrunched in concentration. Mostly crying stuff. One time I heard someone say, "I lost everything." Another time, someone was talking about her children. Mommy was telling her about the foundation thingy. "Foundation?" Olumide's voice came out strangled. "Patience, take the children to school," he said abruptly, standing so fast his chair scraped against the marble floor. "But Daddy, I haven't finished," Malik protested. "Now." The sharpness in his voice silenced the room. Patience quickly gathered the children, shooting him worried glances as she ushered them out. Zainab looked back over her shoulder, and Olumide saw something in her expression that chilled him. Understanding beyond her years, pity for her father's ignorance. The moment the front door closed, Olumide was on the stairs, taking them 2 at a time. His mind raced with possibilities, each one darker than the last. Multiple women, crying, talking about loss and children. What the hell was Funmilayo running in their home? Human trafficking. The thought made him physically ill. Secret gambling ring, blackmail operation, his wife, the respected architect, the woman he'd loved for 12 years, the mother of his children. What was she capable of? He reached the 3rd floor, breath coming in sharp gasps that had nothing to do with physical exertion. The hallway stretched before him, innocent and familiar, except for that door at the end. Room 12. Funmilayo had insisted on numbering the rooms when she designed the house, some architectural quirk about spatial organization. Now that number felt ominous. Olumide approached slowly, each step feeling like walking toward an execution. The door was solid oak, custom-made, with a deadbolt that could only be locked from inside. He'd installed it himself at Funmilayo's request, never questioning why she needed such security. He pressed his ear against the wood. Silence. At 8:47 a.m., room 12 was empty. Whatever happened here occurred under cover of darkness, between 9 p.m. and midnight, when the rest of the house slept. His hand trembled as he tried the handle. Locked, even now. Funmilayo kept it secured even when she wasn't inside, another red flag he'd stupidly ignored. Drop a like if you've ever ignored warning signs until it was almost too late. Olumide's phone rang, making him jump. Private number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him swipe to accept. Mr. Adeleke? A woman's voice. Nigerian accent, but educated. Calm. I know you're standing outside room 12 right now. His blood turned to ice. Who is this? Someone who's been watching, someone who knows what you're thinking, and Mr. Adeleke, you're wrong about everything. How are you? He spun around, checking the hallway for cameras he'd never installed. His own security system didn't have cameras on this floor. Funmilayo had insisted on privacy. I'm not calling to threaten you, the woman continued. I'm calling to give you a choice. You can break down that door right now, destroy what your wife has built, and live with the consequences. Or you can wait until tonight. Trust me when I say what you discover will be easier to process if you hear the full story first. Who are you? My name is Amina, and Mr. Adeleke, 6 years ago, you destroyed my life. You just never knew it. The line went dead. Olumide stood frozen in that hallway, phone still pressed to his ear, mind spinning out of control. 6 years ago? His business had exploded 6 years ago. He'd made dozens of acquisitions, hired hundreds of employees, opened stores across West Africa. How could he have destroyed someone's life without knowing? His phone buzzed with a text from the same private number. 9 p.m. tonight. Be outside room 12. The truth will set you free, but first it will tear you apart. Have you ever received information that rewrote your entire understanding of reality? Comment below about that moment when everything you thought you knew became a lie. Olumide descended the stairs slowly, legs weak, mind reeling. In his study, he pulled up his business records from 6 years ago, 2019. The year Adeltek went from regional player to West African powerhouse. The year he'd leveraged everything to acquire smaller competitors, consolidated the market, became the man everyone in Lagos tech circles talked about. The year he'd become truly wealthy. And apparently, the year he'd destroyed Amina's life. He scrolled through acquisition files, due diligence reports, financial statements, dozens of transactions, hundreds of employees absorbed into his company, everything legal, everything approved by lawyers and accountants. Clean business. But business is never clean, is it? Every deal has winners and losers. Every acquisition means someone loses their dream, their independence, their livelihood. Olumide had never thought about the losers before. He'd been too busy winning. His office door opened. His mother, Iya Olumide, entered without knocking, her traditional ero and buba rustling with her purposeful stride. At 68, she still carried herself like the schoolteacher she'd been before retirement, all authority and no-nonsense wisdom. I can see it on your face, she said without preamble. You've learned something. Mama, what do you know about this? She settled into the leather chair across from his desk, adjusting her head wrap with deliberate care. I know your wife is a better woman than you deserve. I know she's been carrying a burden that should have been yours. And I know that tonight you'll finally understand why I gave her my blessing to marry you, despite my reservations. You know what's behind that door. I know what's in her heart. The door is just wood and locks, Olumide. What matters is what she's protecting. Protecting from what? From whom? His mother's eyes, sharp and knowing, held his. From you, my son. She's been protecting them from you. The words hit like physical blows. I would never hurt. You already did. You just never bothered to look at the faces of the people your success trampled. She stood, moving to the window overlooking their manicured gardens. Your father, God rest his soul, built his mechanic shop with his hands. Every customer was a name, a story, a person. You build empires with spreadsheets and forget there are human beings in those numbers. That's not fair, isn't it? She turned back to him. Tell me, when you bought those 3 repair shops in Maiduguri 6 years ago, did you meet the owners? Did you ask them their names? Did you wonder what happened to them after you dismantled their businesses and absorbed their customers? Maiduguri. The word triggered something. He pulled up his 2019 files again, searching for Maiduguri acquisitions. There, 3 small phone repair shops, purchased for practically nothing during his northeastern expansion. Due diligence had flagged them as underperforming assets, prime for absorption. He'd signed the paperwork without a second thought. Who were they, Mama? You'll learn tonight. But Olumide, when you do, I want you to remember something. Your wife could have told you, could have confronted you, could have made this your shame to carry. Instead, she carried it herself. She's been fixing your mistakes in secret, protecting you from your own conscience. His mother moved toward the door, then paused. One more thing. That child she's protecting, the one you don't know about yet, that child is your blood. And before you judge anyone, remember that wealthy men make mistakes that poor women pay for. She left him there, surrounded by his expensive furniture and his crumbling certainty. The day crawled by with agonizing slowness. Olumide couldn't work, couldn't eat, couldn't think about anything except 9 p.m. He watched the clock like a condemned man counting down to execution. At 8:45 p.m., he positioned himself at the end of the 3rd-floor hallway. His expensive watch ticked toward the moment of truth. At 8:58 p.m., he heard Funmilayo's footsteps on the stairs. At 8:59 p.m., she appeared in the hallway, carrying a tote bag full of folders, her face composed but her eyes red-rimmed. She saw him waiting and stopped. Olumide, I'm not here to stop you. I'm here to listen. Something shifted in her expression. Relief? Fear? You spoke to your mother. And to someone named Amina. Funmilayo closed her eyes, shoulders sagging under invisible weight. Then you know. I know nothing, but I'm ready to learn. She approached the door, key trembling in her hand. Behind that wood, Olumide heard movement, women preparing for their nightly session, unaware that tonight everything would change. Before I open this door, Funmilayo whispered, I need you to promise me something. Whatever you see, whatever you learn, you'll let me finish the story. All of it. Promise me, Olumide. I promise. She unlocked the door. The truth was waiting inside. Subscribe now, because what Olumide sees when that door opens will rewrite everything you thought you knew about guilt, redemption, and the price of success built on other people's ruins. Room 12 wasn't what Olumide expected. Instead of evidence of crime or betrayal, he found a sanctuary. The guest room he remembered, cold, unused, full of storage boxes, had been transformed into something that felt like a counseling center mixed with a living room. Soft lighting from floor lamps created warm pools of illumination. A plush sectional sofa formed a conversation circle. Bookshelves lined one wall, filled with volumes on trauma, grief, entrepreneurship, and healing. A small kitchenette occupied one corner, stocked with tea and snacks. And sitting on that sofa, looking at him with expressions ranging from terror to defiance, were 3 women. The first was perhaps mid-30s, slim with tribal marks on her cheeks, wearing a simple Ankara dress. Her eyes held the kind of wariness that comes from too much disappointment. The second looked younger, maybe late 20s, her hijab wrapped elegantly around a face marked by suffering that aged her beyond her years. The third sat slightly apart from the others, her hands protectively cradling a small baby bump that Olumide's trained eye immediately registered. Pregnant. One of them was pregnant. His mother's words echoed, "That child is your blood." "Olumide," Funmilayo said quietly, closing the door behind them. "Meet Blessing, Hawa, and Chidinma." The names meant nothing to him. 3 strangers in his home, in his wife's secret room, and one of them carrying his child. His mind reeled, trying to process impossible equations. "Before you speak," Funmilayo continued, moving to stand beside the women like a protective barrier. "Before you ask questions or make accusations, you need to understand something. These women are not your enemies. They're not here to destroy your marriage or your reputation. They're here because I asked them to be, because I'm trying to fix what you broke." "I don't understand." "You will." Funmilayo settled into an armchair, gesturing for him to take the one opposite. He remained standing, too wired to sit. "Blessing, would you like to start?" The woman with tribal marks looked at Olumide with eyes that held no warmth. "You won't remember me, Mr. Adeleke. Why would you? I was nobody important, just another small business owner in Maiduguri, trying to survive." Memory stirred like something moving underwater. "The phone repair shops." "My phone repair shop," Blessing corrected, voice sharp. "Not one of 3, mine. The one my husband and I built together before Boko Haram killed him in that market attack in 2017. The shop that fed my 4 children after he died. The shop that gave me purpose when grief tried to swallow me whole." Olumide's throat tightened. "I bought it legally. The deal was—" "Legal?" Blessing laughed, bitter and broken. "Yes, Mr. Adeleke, it was legal. You offered me less than the shop was worth, but I was drowning in debt from my husband's medical bills before he died. I had no choice. Sign or lose everything to the banks anyway. You knew I was desperate. Your lawyers made sure of that." "I didn't know about your husband. I didn't know." "You didn't ask." The accusation hung in the air like smoke. "You saw an underperforming asset. I saw my children's future. After you bought my shop and closed it down to consolidate customers into your new Adeleke store, I lost everything. My regular customers didn't know where I went. I couldn't afford to start over. For 8 months, I couldn't feed my children properly. Share this video if you've ever felt invisible to people with power." Hawa spoke next, her voice softer but no less painful. "I was 15 when my father tried to marry me off to a man 3 times my age. I ran away with nothing but the clothes on my back. Spent 2 years in a women's shelter in Yola, learning phone repairs, saved every naira until I could open my own shop in Maiduguri. That shop was my independence, Mr. Adeleke. Proof that I didn't need a husband or a father or any man to survive." She paused, fingers twisting her hijab. "When you bought it in 2019, I tried to negotiate, tried to explain that this wasn't just business for me. It was freedom. Your representative said, Sentiment doesn't affect market value. 6 months after I lost my shop, I was back in Yola, back in that shelter, feeling like I was 15 again, with nothing. Olumide felt something cracking inside his chest. These weren't just transactions. These were lives, stories, human beings whose names he'd never bothered to learn. His eyes moved to Chidinma, the pregnant one, and dread coiled in his stomach. And you? Chidinma's hand moved protectively over her bump. She was beautiful in that understated way that didn't demand attention. But her eyes held something that made Olumide's blood run cold. Recognition. "We've met before," she said quietly, "though I doubt you remember. It was March 2019. At that corporate party your company hosted at the Transcorp Hilton in Maiduguri. You were celebrating your northeastern expansion." Flashes of memory. Champagne, laughter, too much whiskey, a beautiful woman in catering uniform who'd smiled at him near the hotel bar. Later, fumbling in a dark hallway, her breath sweet with wine, his hands on her waist, a hotel room that wasn't his, mourning regret that he'd buried under business as usual. "Oh, God," Olumide whispered. "I worked catering that night," Chidinma continued, voice steady despite tears tracking down her cheeks. "You were charming, funny, said I was beautiful. You never asked my name, never asked if I was married or had children or what I did besides serve drinks. 2 weeks later, I discovered I was pregnant. By then, you'd already bought my shop and disappeared back to Lagos. The room spun. Your shop. My shop. The third one. The smallest one. I'd opened it 6 months before that party, using everything I'd saved, working 3 jobs. When you acquired it, I tried to negotiate a position in your new store. Your HR department said I wasn't qualified. I was 23, pregnant with your child, suddenly unemployed, and you never knew I existed." Olumide sank into the armchair, legs no longer capable of holding him. "How old is the child?" "He's 4. His name is Olumide." "You named him?" "After his father. I didn't do it to trap you or to claim anything from you. I did it because he deserved to know where he came from, even if his father never knew he existed." Comment below. How do you reconcile success that's built on other people's suffering? Funmilayo's voice cut through his spiraling thoughts. "I found them last year. I was designing a community center in Maiduguri, and Blessing was working construction there. The only job she could get after losing her shop. We started talking. She mentioned your company's name, the acquisition that destroyed her business. I didn't think much of it until she introduced me to Hawa, who had a similar story, and then Chidinma. How did you know about—" Olumide gestured helplessly at Chidinma's bump. "She was pregnant again. Different father, someone who actually wanted to be involved. But she mentioned her first child, a boy who looked exactly like the man who'd bought her shop and never looked back. I asked to see a photo. The moment I saw little Olumide, I knew. He has your eyes, your nose, your smile. You had him tested." The question came out hollow. "With a hair from your brush. DNA confirmed it 3 months ago." Funmilayo's voice remained calm, clinically professional, as if discussing architecture plans instead of earth-shattering revelations. "I had a choice, Olumide. I could tell you immediately, watch you panic and probably try to pay them off to disappear. Or I could do what needed to be done first, heal them, help them, give them back some of what you took. So you locked yourself in this room every night for 8 months. The timeline clicked into place. Doing what? Therapy sessions, business consultations, skills training. Blessing is studying accounting online now. Hawa is developing a business plan for a women's technology training center. Chidinma is working with me part-time as an architectural assistant while she goes back to school. I've been using my own money, Funmilayo added, anticipating his question. My inheritance from my father, about 15 million naira so far. I didn't touch your accounts because this wasn't your redemption to buy. It was mine to earn. Olumide's head snapped up. What do you mean, yours to earn? Funmilayo's composure finally cracked. Tears spilled down her perfect cheekbones, smudging her makeup. Because I knew, Olumide. Maybe not the specifics, but I knew your business practices weren't always ethical. I knew you prioritized profit over people. I knew you moved through the world like human beings were just assets to acquire or obstacles to remove. And I said nothing. I enjoyed the mansion, the cars, the country club lifestyle, all of it built on the backs of people like Blessing and Hoa and Chidinma. She wiped at her face angrily. I was complicit in your success, so when I found them, when I realized the depth of damage you'd done without even knowing it, I couldn't just tell you and make it your problem to solve. I had to fix it myself first. I had to prove to them, and to myself, that not everyone with money is a monster. The room fell silent, except for the soft sound of crying. Olumide realized he wasn't sure who was crying anymore. The women on the sofa, his wife, or himself. The baby, he finally managed. Chidinma's baby. You said, different father? Chidinma repeated firmly. Someone I've been seeing for 2 years. Someone who wants this child. But I thought you should know about your son, about Olumide Jr. He deserves to know his father, even if his father doesn't deserve to know him. The cruelty of that statement was softened by the absolute truth in it. Hit subscribe, because Olumide's response to this revelation will either destroy 3 women who've already lost everything, or begin a journey of redemption that will cost him more than money can buy. Olumide stood on shaking legs, crossed to the window overlooking Lagos's glittering skyline. His city, his empire. Built on what? Innovation, hard work, or the systematic crushing of people too small to fight back? Why didn't you just tell me? He asked, voice raw. Why the secrecy? Because I didn't know which version of you would show up. Funmilayo answered honestly. The man I married who once cried at a charity event for orphans, or the CEO who fires people via email and never thinks about them again. I needed to protect them first, build them up enough so that when you finally learned the truth, they'd be strong enough to face you. And your mother knew? My mother has always known what kind of man you are, both your potential for good and your capacity for harm. She gave me her blessing to marry you because she saw something in you worth saving. But she also warned me that wealth corrupts, that success blinds us to suffering we cause. She was right. Blessing stood, gathering her purse with dignity that humbled him. We should go. This is a family matter now. Wait. Olumide turned from the window. Please, I need to understand all of it. Understand what, Mr. Adeleke? Blessing's voice was cold. That your business decisions have consequences, that we're human beings, not just line items in your acquisition reports? Yes, all of that. And I need to know. He looked at Chidinma. My son. I need to know about my son. The pregnant woman stood slowly, protective of her second child, even in this moment. What do you want to know? Everything. His favorite food, whether he laughs like me, if he's smart or funny or kind, Everything I should have known for 4 years but didn't, because I was too drunk and too careless to even ask your name. Tears spilled down Chidinma's cheeks. He loves Puff Puff. He laughs exactly like you. I've seen videos of you at corporate events. He's brilliant at puzzles, gentle with animals, asks a million questions about everything. He's perfect, Mr. Adeleke. Perfect despite your absence. The despite cut deeper than any accusation could. I want to meet him. I want to... Olumide's voice broke. I want to do right by him, by all of you. I don't know how. I don't know if it's even possible, but I want to try. Hawa spoke for the first time directly to him. Why should we believe you? Why should we trust that this isn't just guilt talking, and tomorrow you'll go back to being the man who destroyed our lives without looking back? You shouldn't, Olumide admitted. You have no reason to trust me. But maybe you could trust her. He gestured to Funmilayo. She spent 8 months proving that people with resources can choose compassion over cruelty. Let me prove it too. The 3 women exchanged glances, silent communication passing between them. Finally, Blessing spoke. We'll think about it. But Mr. Adeleke, understand this. We're not asking for your charity. We're rebuilding our lives with or without you. What we're asking is whether you want to be the kind of man who acknowledges his mistakes or the kind who pays people to forget them. I want to acknowledge them. I want to fix them. Then start by listening to the rest of the story, Funmilayo said quietly. Because what you've learned tonight is only half the truth. The other half involves your mother, my childhood in a refugee camp, and a debt I've been repaying for 15 years. A debt that's why I married you in the first place. Olumide felt the ground shift again. What are you talking about? Sit down, Olumide, because the story of this locked door starts long before we met, in a place where people like your mother become heroes. And people like teenage me learn what real compassion looks like. Drop a comment if you're ready for the truth about why Funmilayo really married Olumide and how his mother connects everything. Funmilayo pulled a folder from her tote bag, hands trembling slightly as she opened it. Inside were photographs, faded, worn at the edges, obviously precious. She spread them across the coffee table like evidence in a trial. This, she said, pointing to a photo of a makeshift tent camp, is where I lived from 2014 to 2016, the IDP camp outside Maiduguri, where my family fled after Boko Haram attacked our village in Borno State. Olumide stared at the images. He'd seen camps like this on news reports, humanitarian appeals, charity campaigns. But sitting in his luxury mansion, looking at his wife's face among the displaced, the suffering felt suddenly, horrifyingly real. I was 16 when we arrived, Funmilayo continued, voice distant with memory. My father had been killed in the initial attack. My younger brother disappeared. We never found out if he died or was taken. It was just me, my mother, and my 2 younger sisters. We had nothing, not even proper shoes. She pulled out another photo, this one showing a thin teenage girl, barely recognizable as Funmilayo, standing beside a frail woman wrapped in faded cloth. My mother was sick, had been since before the attack, but trauma and camp conditions made it worse. Malaria, malnutrition, something wrong with her heart that we couldn't diagnose without proper medical facilities. She was dying, Olumide. Slowly wasting away in that tent while I tried to keep my sisters fed and safe. Olumide felt his throat constrict. I never knew. Because I never told you. When we met at that charity gala in 2017, I was already reinventing myself. The successful architecture student from Ibadan, sophisticated and educated. No tragic backstory to make wealthy men uncomfortable. Her laugh was bitter. I learned early that people like you prefer charity at a distance. You want to help the poor, but you don't want to marry them. That's not fair, isn't it? Tell me honestly, if I'd told you on our first date that I was a refugee camp survivor, that I'd watched children die from preventable diseases, that I'd gone days without eating so my sisters could have my rations, would you have called me for a second date? Or would I have become another charity case, someone to pity from afar? The silence answered better than words could. Funmilayo pulled out another photograph, and Olumide's world tilted again. The woman in the image, wearing volunteer identification and distributing medical supplies, was unmistakable, despite being 15 years younger. His mother. Iya Olumide came to the camp in late 2015, Funmilayo said softly. She was part of a church group from Lagos providing medical assistance and supplies. Most volunteers came once, took photos for social media, and never returned. Your mother came back every month for a year. Olumide's hand shook as he picked up the photo. His mother had never mentioned volunteering in refugee camps. She'd mentioned church activities, charity work, but never this. Never the specifics that made it real and immediate and personal. She found my mother during one of the worst periods, Funmilayo continued. Mama had stopped eating, stopped fighting. I was 17 by then, convinced I was about to watch her die. Ya Olumide didn't just provide medical care. She stayed with us, talked to my mother, prayed with her, convinced her to fight. She paid for proper medical treatment outside the camp, used her own money to buy the medications we needed. Tears streamed down Funmilayo's face now, washing away the sophisticated architect to reveal the traumatized teenager she'd been. She saved my mother's life, Olumide. Not with grandiose charity or photo opportunities, but with consistent, quiet compassion. She visited us every month for a year, brought food, medicine, hope. And before she left each time, she'd tell me the same thing. When you escape this place, when you build your life again, remember to help those who cannot help themselves. That's the true measure of success. Blessing Hawa and Chidinma watched silently, their expressions softening as the story unfolded. They'd clearly heard parts of this before, but Olumide was learning it for the first time, each revelation a hammer blow to his understanding of his own life. When my mother finally recovered enough to leave the camp in 2016, Iya Olumide helped us relocate to Ibadan. She connected us with relatives I didn't know we had, helped pay for my sister's school fees, made sure we had a real home. She saved us, Olumide. Your mother saved my entire family. Olumide's mind reeled. And you never told me this when we met. How could I? I met you at that charity gala in 2017, a fundraiser for displaced persons, ironically. You were this brilliant, handsome tech entrepreneur, already successful at 30. I was a scholarship architecture student, trying to look like I belonged in that 5-star hotel ballroom. When you asked me to dinner, I was terrified you'd ask questions I couldn't answer without revealing everything. She pulled out one more photograph, this one recent. Iya Olumide, standing in this very room, room 12, surrounded by Blessing, Hawa, and Chidinma, all of them smiling. Your mother recognized me at our wedding reception. I saw it in her eyes during the ceremony, the moment she realized who I was. After the reception, she pulled me aside and said, "You're the girl from the camp. The one with the sick mother and brave heart." I thought she'd be angry that I hadn't told you, that I'd hidden my past. Instead, she hugged me and whispered, "Now I understand why God brought you to my son." Olumide felt tears burning his eyes. She knew all along. She knew my past. And when I found Blessing, Hawa, and Chidinma last year, when I realized what your business had done to them, I went to your mother. I didn't know what to do, how to tell you, how to fix something so broken. She told me about this house, about the unused guest room, about her own shame that her son had become the kind of man who didn't see the human cost of his success. Mama said that? She loves you, Olumide. But love doesn't mean blindness. She suggested I create this space, this sanctuary, where broken women could heal. She's been helping fund it. Did you know that? Every month she transfers money into a separate account, money she saved from teaching, from your father's insurance. She told me, "My son's wealth came from hurting people. Let my widow's mite help heal them." The weight of it all, his wife's hidden past, his mother's secret compassion, his own blind destruction, crushed down on Olumide until he could barely breathe. He'd thought he knew his family, his marriage, his life. But he'd been living in a carefully constructed illusion, while the women around him carried the weight of truth he was too comfortable to see. Have you ever realized that the people closest to you were protecting you from yourself? Share your story in the comments. The locked door, Olumide said hoarsely. It was never about hiding something from me. It was about protecting them until they were strong enough to face me. Yes, Funmilayo confirmed. These women had already been destroyed by your carelessness once. I couldn't risk you doing it again, even accidentally. They needed to heal first, to rebuild their strength and dignity. Only then could they face the man who'd taken everything from them. Blessing spoke up, her voice less hostile now. Your wife spent 8 months giving us back our power, Mr. Adeleke, teaching us that we're not victims, we're survivors, that our worth isn't defined by what you took from us, but by what we rebuilt from the ruins. And now, Olumide asked, looking at each woman in turn, now that I know everything, what happens? That depends on you, Hawa answered. You can write checks to make yourself feel better, throw money at the problem and go back to your comfortable life. Or you can actually change, actually see us, actually do the work of becoming the kind of man your mother hoped you'd be. Chidinma shifted, one hand on her pregnant belly, the other reaching into her bag. She pulled out a small photo album, hesitated, then handed it to Olumide. This is your son. The album trembled in Olumide's hands as he opened it. The first photo showed a newborn with a shock of black hair and skin the exact shade of his own. Page by page, he watched his son grow. First smile, first steps, first day of preschool. In every image, little Olumide's eyes stared out with intelligence and curiosity that was achingly familiar. He asks about his father, Chidinma said quietly. I told him his daddy lives far away, that he's very busy but thinks about him. I didn't want him growing up thinking he wasn't wanted, even if that was the truth. I want him, Olumide choked out. I didn't know, but I want him. I want to know him. Then you'll have to earn that right, Chidinma responded firmly. You don't get to be his father just because of biology. You have to prove you deserve that title. And Mr. Adeleke, proving that starts with how you treat all of us, not just the child you shared DNA with. The ultimatum hung in the air, clear and non-negotiable. These women had found their strength again, and they weren't going to surrender it for money or guilt or biological claims. Olumide closed the photo album carefully, pressing it against his chest, like it might keep his heart from shattering completely. What do you need from me? All of you. Not what I think you need or what would make me feel better. What do you actually need? The question seemed to surprise them. Funmilayo's eyes widened slightly, and the three women exchanged glances again. That silent communication Olumide was beginning to recognize as hard-won sisterhood. Blessing answered first. I need my business back, not your version of it, but mine. The repair shop I built, the customer relationships I cultivated, the independence I earned. I'm studying accounting now, learning proper business management. When I'm ready, I want to open a new shop with legitimate partnership terms, not exploitation disguised as acquisition. Done, Olumide said immediately. Let me finish. Blessing cut him off. I don't want your guilt money or your charity. I want a business loan with fair terms, mentorship from your successful managers, and a commitment that if my business thrives, you won't swoop in and acquire it again when it becomes profitable. I want the chance to succeed on my own merits. The specificity of her demands showed how much thought she'd put into this, how much time Funmilayo had spent helping her envision a future beyond survival. Hawa spoke next. I want to open a technology training center for young women, especially those escaping bad situations like I did. Girls who need skills and independence more than they need husbands. I have the curriculum planned, the business model designed, but I need startup capital and industry connections. Your company dominates West African tech. I need access to that network, not as a charity case, but as a legitimate training partner. Also done, Olumide managed. And I want it in writing, Hawa added sharply. Contracts that protect me, legal agreements that ensure you can't pull funding or support on a whim. I've learned the hard way that verbal promises from powerful men mean nothing. The accusation stung because it was earned. Chidinma was last. She stood slowly, both hands cradling her pregnant belly now, and for the first time since the door opened, she looked directly into Olumide's eyes with something other than wariness. I want my son to have a father, Mr. Adeleke. Not a checkbook or a guilty conscience, but an actual father who shows up, who stays consistent, who proves that a man's mistakes don't have to define his children's futures. I want you to meet him, spend time with him. Let him decide if he wants you in his life. And if he does, I want co-parenting agreements that protect him legally and emotionally. And what about you? Olumide asked. What do you need? Chidinma's hand moved to her second pregnancy. I need you to respect my relationship with my partner, to understand that this baby isn't yours, and to never use your wealth or influence to interfere with my family. I need you to acknowledge your son without trying to own me. I need boundaries that keep everyone safe. The maturity in her demands humbled him. At 27, having survived his carelessness and rebuilt her life, Chidinma understood power dynamics better than he did at 42. Subscribe now, because what Olumide does next will determine whether redemption is possible when you've destroyed lives without even noticing. Olumide stood, legs steadier now despite the emotional devastation. He walked to each woman in turn, meeting their eyes, letting them see his tear-stained face and trembling hands. I can't undo what I did. I can't give you back the years I took or the suffering I caused. But I can do better going forward. I can be better. He turned to Funmilayo. And you've been carrying this alone for 8 months, while I suspected you of betrayal. You've been fixing my mistakes while I accused you of destroying our marriage. I made choices, too, Funmilayo said quietly. I chose to hide this from you, to handle it alone. Maybe that wasn't fair either. It was necessary, Blessing interjected. Mr. Adeleke, your wife gave us back our dignity before she introduced us to our destroyer. That wasn't unfair. That was merciful. The word destroyer landed like a physical blow. Is that what he was? A destroyer of lives, wrapped in expensive suits and success metrics? His phone buzzed. A text from his mother. Have you learned the truth yet? He typed back with shaking fingers. Why didn't you tell me? Her response came immediately. Because you needed to hear it from them. You needed to see the faces behind your transactions. Now you know. The question is, what will you do with that knowledge? What would he do? The old Olumide would have written checks, signed legal agreements, and returned to business as usual with his conscience, soothed by financial compensation. But financial compensation couldn't restore years of suffering. It couldn't give Blessing back the time she spent unable to feed her children. It couldn't return Huwa's sense of security or Chidinma's innocence. Money couldn't fix this. Only transformation could. I want to meet with you again, Olumide said to the three women. All of you, regularly. I want to understand your plans, support them properly, learn from you. And I want... He swallowed hard. I want to meet my son, when you're ready, when he's ready. Not to take him from you, Chidinma, but to be present in his life in whatever way serves him best. We'll consider it, Blessing said, speaking for the group. But Mr. Adeleke, understand that trust isn't bought. It's earned through consistency over time. Your wife has been earning our trust for 8 months. You're starting from less than 0. I understand. Do you? Hawa challenged. Because there will be moments when this feels too hard, too uncomfortable, too much like penance. There will be times when you resent us for disrupting your comfortable life. Will you stay consistent then? Or will you disappear back into your empire and leave us to pick up the pieces again? The question cut to the core of his character. Would he? Could he sustain discomfort long enough to create real change? I don't know, Olumide admitted honestly. I want to promise I'll never falter, but I can't predict the future. What I can promise is that I'll keep showing up, even when it's hard, even when I fail. I'll keep showing up. The raw honesty seemed to shift something in the room. The three women's defensive postures relaxed slightly. Not acceptance yet, but maybe the beginning of possibility. Comment below. Is transformation possible for people who've caused harm? Or are some mistakes too big to overcome? Funmilayo stood, moving to Olumide's side for the first time since the door opened. She didn't touch him, but her presence beside him felt like an olive branch. There's one more thing you need to know, she said. Your mother wants to formalize what we've been doing here. She wants to create a foundation, the Second Chance Foundation, dedicated to supporting small business owners who've been displaced by corporate acquisitions and refugees rebuilding their lives after trauma. She wants you to fund it with 20% of Adeltek's annual profits. 20%? The number was staggering. She said if your success came from taking, your legacy should be built on giving back. And not token charity, Olumide. Substantial, sustained commitment that actually changes systems, not just individual circumstances. His mother's vision was as audacious as it was challenging. 20% would mean restructuring his entire business model, rethinking growth strategies, possibly facing resistance from shareholders and board members who prioritized profit above all else. It would also mean becoming the kind of man his father had been, the mechanic who knew every customer's name, who measured success in relationships rather than revenue. When does she want to start? She already has. This room, these sessions, Blessing's accounting education, Hawa's curriculum development, Chidinma's architectural apprenticeship. That's all been the Foundation's pilot program. Your mother has been using her savings to prove the concept works. Now she wants you to scale it properly. Olumide pulled out his phone, pulling up his business banking app. He navigated to the charitable giving account he barely used, token donations to look good at galas and in press releases. The balance showed 6 million naira, embarrassingly small compared to his wealth. He transferred 50 million naira from his personal account into the charitable fund, then typed out a memo. Second Chance Foundation, initial commitment, more to come. This is a start, he said, showing the transfer to Funmilayo. But I know money isn't enough. What else does Mama need? She needs you to attend the sessions, Funmilayo answered. Not as a donor, but as a participant. She wants you to hear more stories like Blessing's, Hawa's, and Chidinma's. She wants you to understand that every business decision you make affects real people, with real lives. She wants to transform how you see the world. The ask was more invasive than any financial commitment. Sitting in rooms with people he'd harmed, hearing their stories, facing their pain regularly, that would cost him more than money. It would cost him the comfortable distance between himself and the consequences of his actions. I'll do it, Olumide said. Whatever she asks, whatever it takes. Blessing stood, gathering her things. We should go. It's late, and this has been... She paused, searching for words. A lot. The other women stood as well, preparing to leave. Olumide watched them, these three strangers who'd become the most important people in his understanding of himself. Before you go, he said, I need to say something, not an apology. I know words aren't enough, but an acknowledgement. You deserved better from me 6 years ago. You deserve to be seen as human beings, not assets. You deserve to have your stories heard and your struggles considered. I failed you completely. And while I can't undo that failure, I can commit to doing better from this moment forward. Hawa nodded slowly. That's a start, Mr. Adeleke. Just a start. They filed out of room 12, Funmilayo walking them to the front door, while Olumide stood alone in the sanctuary his wife had built from his destruction. The room felt sacred now, heavy with confessions and possibilities. His phone rang. His mother. Mama, you know everything now? Everything. Why didn't you tell me? About the refugee camp, about Funmilayo's past, about what kind of man you were becoming. His mother's voice was gentle but firm. Because you needed to learn it from the people you hurt, not from your old mother's lectures. You needed to see their faces, hear their voices, feel the weight of your carelessness. I feel it, Mama. God, I feel it. Good. That weight is yours to carry now, not alone. Funmilayo and I will help you, but you can't set it down or pay someone else to hold it. This is your burden and your opportunity. The foundation, 20% of profits. That's billions of naira over time. And you'll still be obscenely wealthy, my son. The question isn't whether you can afford it. The question is whether you can afford not to. Your father taught you to fix things. Now I'm teaching you to fix the things your success has broken. Tears streamed down Olumide's face. I want to meet him, my son. Little Olumide. Then prove to his mother that you're worthy of that gift, not through money or legal rights, but through the slow, unglamorous work of becoming a man who shows up and stays consistent. Can you do that? I don't know, but I'm going to try. Then that's enough for now. Come see me tomorrow. We have work to do. The call ended, leaving Olumide alone in room 12 with the weight of transformation pressing down on his shoulders. Hit that like button if you've ever had to face the truth about yourself and didn't like what you found. Funmilayo returned, finding him still standing there, staring at the bookshelves full of healing literature he'd never known existed in his own home. They're willing to give you a chance, she said quietly. That's more grace than you deserve, but they're choosing it anyway. Why? After everything I did, why would they choose grace? Because your mother taught them that people can change. Because I showed them that wealth can be used for restoration, not just destruction, and because they're stronger than the circumstances that tried to break them. They're choosing grace for themselves, Olumide, not for you. They're refusing to let bitterness define their futures. He turned to her, this woman he thought he'd known for 12 years, but was only now beginning to see. What you've done here, it's extraordinary. It was necessary. But Olumide, I need you to understand something. This marriage only survives if you transform, not surface changes or performative guilt, but deep, fundamental transformation of how you move through the world. Can you do that? I'll do it or die trying. Then we have a chance. She moved closer, finally touching him, one hand on his chest, feeling his racing heartbeat. But if you fail them again, if you break your promises or lose interest when the novelty wears off, I won't forgive you. This is your one opportunity to become the man I hoped you could be when I married you. Why did you marry me? Knowing what you knew about your past and my mother's connection to it? Funmilayo smiled sadly. Because your mother saw potential in you that you hadn't yet realized. She told me on our wedding day, my son has his father's hands, hands that fix things. Right now, he's using them to build wealth. Your job is to teach him to build legacy. I've been waiting 12 years for you to be ready to learn that lesson. I'm ready now. We'll see. Talk is easy, Olumide. Transformation is agonizing. They stood in that room together, the locked door finally open, secrets finally revealed, and the hardest work still ahead. Subscribe, because the next chapter shows whether Olumide can sustain transformation when the cameras aren't watching and the guilt fades into daily routine. Because real redemption isn't a moment, it's a lifetime of different choices. Olumide didn't sleep. He lay in their bed, the one they'd shared for 12 years, watching Funmilayo sleep with new eyes. How many nights had she lain here carrying the weight of what she knew? How many mornings had she woken up and chosen to love a man who was destroying lives without even knowing it? At 5 a.m., he gave up on sleep and went to his study. His laptop glowed to life, illuminating years of business records and acquisition files. He opened the 2019 folder again, but this time he didn't just see numbers and asset valuations. He saw Blessing's 4 children going hungry. Hawa returning to the shelter she'd escaped. Chidinma pregnant and unemployed, too proud to hunt down the man who'd used her body and forgotten her name. How many others? The question haunted him. How many other Blessings and Hawas and Chidinmas existed in his 15 years of business dealings? He created a new spreadsheet, starting with every acquisition Adeleke had made since 2010. Dozens of small businesses absorbed into his empire. Hundreds of employees fired or demoted. Thousands of customers redirected from mom-and-pop shops to his sleek corporate stores. Each line in that spreadsheet represented a story he'd never bothered to learn. His office door opened. His mother entered, already dressed despite the early hour, carrying a thermos of tea and her usual air of purpose. "You're starting the inventory," she observed, settling into the chair across from his desk. "Inventory?" "Of your destruction. Good. You need to know the full scope before you can address it properly." She poured tea into 2 cups, the familiar ritual grounding him. "But Olumide, you cannot fix every broken thing. That's not the lesson here." "Then what is?" "The lesson is that going forward, every business decision you make must consider the human cost, not just the profit margin. The past is inventory. Learn from it. Make amends where possible. But the future is where your real transformation will be tested." Olumide sipped the tea, bitter and hot, like truth itself. "The board meeting is next week. I need to present the foundation proposal." "They'll resist. 20% of profits is significant." "Let them resist. I'm the majority shareholder. I can push it through." His mother smiled slightly. "Look at you, already wielding power for good instead of just for growth. But Olumide, forcing change through authority isn't the same as inspiring it through leadership. If your board doesn't understand why this matters, they'll undermine it at every turn." "Then how do I make them understand?" "The same way you're learning, through stories, not spreadsheets. Bring Blessing to the board meeting. Let her tell them what acquisition meant for her family. Bring Hawa. Let her explain what independence meant before you took it. Make your board see the faces behind the transactions." The suggestion was brilliant and terrifying, exposing his mistakes to the people who'd built their careers on his success, admitting that the foundation of Adelteke's growth was other people's ruin. Comment below. Would you have the courage to expose your mistakes to the people who depend on your success? "They'll lose faith in my leadership," Olumide said. "They'll lose faith in leadership that lacks conscience," his mother corrected. "But they'll follow a leader who admits mistakes and commits to doing better. The question is whether you're brave enough to be that vulnerable." Funmilayo appeared in the doorway, wrapped in a robe, hair loose around her shoulders. "He's brave enough," she said quietly. "He just doesn't know it yet." She entered the study, standing behind Olumide's chair and placing her hands on his shoulders. The touch felt like forgiveness, or maybe just possibility. "The question isn't whether to bring Blessing to the board meeting," Funmilayo continued. "The question is whether you're ready to tell the full story, including Chidinma and your son, because that part will damage your reputation in ways business mistakes never could." Olumide's hands stilled on the keyboard. "You think I should tell them about—" "I think you should stop protecting your image and start protecting your integrity," Funmilayo answered. "Your board respects power and success. Show them that real power is acknowledging the children your carelessness created. Real success is becoming a father to a son you didn't know existed instead of hiding him to preserve your reputation." The thought of standing before his board, these titans of Nigerian business, these men and women who'd watched him build an empire, and admitting he had a 4-year-old son born from a drunken encounter with a woman whose business he'd destroyed. That level of vulnerability could cost him everything. or it could redefine everything. "Mama," he asked, "when you volunteered at the refugee camp, did people know? Your church? Your friends?" "Everyone knew. Some praised it. Many criticized it. Said I was wasting time and money on people who'd never repay me. That charity should stay close to home." But Olumide, the criticism meant nothing because I knew who I was serving and why. When you know your purpose, other people's opinions become background noise. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Chidinma. Little Olumide asked about his daddy this morning. I told him that his daddy is learning to be brave. Don't prove me wrong." The message landed like a challenge and a gift. Somewhere in Lagos, his son was waking up, asking questions, forming understanding about who his father was. What story did Olumide want that to be? The story of a powerful man who hid his mistakes? Or the story of a flawed man who found the courage to transform? Share this video if you believe transformation is possible for anyone willing to do the hard work. "I'll do it," Olumide said decisively. "I'll tell the board everything, the acquisitions, the foundation proposal, Chidinma, my son, all of it." His mother and wife exchanged glances. Silent communication he was beginning to recognize as the language of women who'd been carrying truth, while men slept in comfortable ignorance. "Then we have work to do," his mother said. "You don't just confess mistakes, Olumide. You present a vision for redemption. By next week's board meeting, you need to show them not just what you did wrong, but what doing right looks like going forward." The week that followed tested Olumide in ways business school never prepared him for. He met with Blessing, Hawa, and Chidinma daily, listening to their stories in detail, understanding the cascading effects of his business decisions. Blessing's eldest daughter had dropped out of school to help support the family. Hawa had developed anxiety so severe she couldn't sleep in unfamiliar places. Chidinma had contemplated suicide twice during her pregnancy, stopped only by the thought of the child growing inside her. Each story carved deeper into his understanding of power and responsibility. He worked with Funmilayo to draft the Foundation's mission statement, operational framework, and funding model. 20% of Adeltek's profits translated to approximately 800 million naira annually, enough to provide business loans, training programs, counseling services, and legal support to hundreds of displaced entrepreneurs. He drafted his confession to the board, revising it 17 times before his mother finally told him to stop polishing and start feeling. "They need to hear your heart, not your PR strategy," she said, tearing up his latest draft. "Speak like you're talking to your son. What do you want him to know about who his father chose to become?" On the night before the board meeting, Olumide stood in room 12, the sanctuary that had become his confessional, and practiced his presentation. Funmilayo sat in her usual chair, Blessing and Hawa on the sofa. Chidinma in the corner with her laptop open, taking notes. "You're still performing," Blessing said after his third run-through. "You sound like a CEO giving a business presentation, not a man admitting he destroyed lives." "How do I sound less like a CEO?" "Stop thinking about how you sound," Hawa advised. "Just tell the truth, the messy, uncomfortable, reputation-destroying truth. If you're really committed to transformation, you have to be willing to lose everything to gain integrity." Chidinma looked up from her laptop. "My son asked me yesterday if his daddy is a good man. I told him I don't know yet, but I'm watching to find out. What should I tell him after tomorrow's board meeting?" The question hung in the air, weighted with stakes that had nothing to do with profit margins or market share. Olumide sat down, abandoning his notes. Tell him his daddy made terrible mistakes. Tell him that success without conscience is just destruction with better marketing. Tell him that his daddy is learning, slowly, painfully. That the people we don't see are often the people we hurt most. And tell him, his voice cracked, tell him that his daddy can't wait to meet him, to know him, to prove that biology doesn't make you a father, but choosing to show up does. The room fell silent. Then Blessing spoke quietly. That. Say that tomorrow. Exactly like you just said it to us. That's what transformation sounds like. Drop a comment if you've ever had to choose between your reputation and your integrity. The morning of the board meeting, Olumide woke to find Funmilayo already dressed in a sharp business suit. "I'm coming with you," she said before he could ask, "and so are they." Behind her, Blessing, Hawa, and Chidinma stood in the doorway, also dressed professionally, faces set with determination that made them look like warriors preparing for battle. "You don't have to do this," Olumide said. "Yes, we do," Blessing replied, "because if we're asking you to be brave enough to expose your mistakes, we need to be brave enough to face the people who benefited from our suffering. This isn't just your transformation, Mr. Adeleke. It's ours, too." The Adeleke boardroom occupied the top floor of the company's Lagos headquarters, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Victoria Island's glittering skyline. 15 board members sat around the imported conference table, their expressions ranging from curious to concerned. They'd received the meeting agenda, strategic realignment and foundation proposal. They expected typical corporate planning. They had no idea what was coming. Olumide stood at the head of the table, Funmilayo beside him, the 3 women seated in chairs along the wall like witnesses in a trial. Because that's what this was, a trial, where Olumide served as both defendant and prosecutor, accuser and accused. "Before we discuss quarterly earnings or market expansion," Olumide began, voice steadier than he felt, "I need to tell you a story about what our success has cost." For the next hour, he confessed everything, the Maiduguri acquisitions and the faces behind them, his mother's refugee camp work and Funmilayo's hidden past, the locked door and the sanctuary it concealed, Chidinma and the 4-year-old son he'd never met. He didn't sanitize or spin. He presented his failures with the raw honesty Blessing had demanded, letting his reputation crack apart in front of the people whose respect he'd spent 15 years earning. When he finished, the silence was devastating. Then Blessing stood. She moved to the front of the room, standing beside Olumide, and addressed the board directly. "My name is Blessing Okafor. 6 years ago, Mr. Adeleke's company acquired my business for a fraction of its value, knowing I was desperate. For 8 months after that acquisition, I couldn't adequately feed my 4 children. My eldest daughter dropped out of school to work as a housemaid. My son developed malnutrition-related health problems, all because your growth strategy didn't account for the human cost of your expansion." She paused, letting them sit with that reality. "But here's what you need to understand. I'm not here for your pity or your guilt. I'm here to tell you that the man standing beside me has spent the last 2 weeks listening to my story, understanding my pain, and committing to do better. The question is whether you're willing to follow his lead or whether you'll prioritize profit over people." Hawa stood next, moving to Blessing's side. She shared her story, escaping child marriage, building independence, losing it to corporate acquisition, the anxiety and shame that followed. Then Chidinma stood, visibly pregnant, and told them about the night she met Olumide, the pregnancy that resulted, the son growing up without a father, because drunken carelessness had seemed consequence-free. By the time all three women finished, several board members were visibly emotional. Others looked angry. A few seemed uncomfortable, probably calculating the legal and PR ramifications. The chairman of the board, a 60-year-old entrepreneur who'd mentored Olumide since his 20s, finally spoke. "Olumide, what you've shared is—" He paused, searching for words. "Devastating. Both the mistakes you made and the courage required to expose them. But I need to ask, why tell us this? Why not handle it privately and spare yourself this humiliation?" Olumide met his mentor's eyes. "Because private redemption is just reputation management. Public transformation requires public accountability. I need this board to understand that the foundation I'm proposing isn't charity. It's restitution. It's acknowledging that our success came at other people's expense, and going forward, we have a responsibility to build differently. 20% of annual profits," another board member said, reading the proposal. "That's hundreds of millions of naira that could be reinvested in growth, in shareholder value, or invested in becoming the kind of company that grows without destroying," Funmilayo interjected. She'd been silent until now, but her voice carried authority earned through 8 months of building what Olumide was only now beginning to understand. You can continue prioritizing profit above all else, and maybe you'll grow another 20% this year. Or you can prioritize both profit and people, grow slightly slower, and build a legacy that doesn't require hiding faces and forgetting names. Hit subscribe, because what happens next will determine whether corporate transformation is possible or whether profits will always win over people. The debate lasted 3 hours. Some board members argued that business and charity should remain separate. Others worried about setting precedents that could impact other acquisitions. A few questioned whether Olumide's leadership was compromised by his personal failures. But slowly, story by story, argument by argument, the tide shifted. Blessing's dignity moved them. Hawa's strength challenged them. Chidinma's grace humbled them. And Olumide's raw honesty, his willingness to destroy his own reputation for the possibility of redemption, convinced them. The vote wasn't unanimous. 3 board members voted against the foundation, warning that it set dangerous precedents for corporate responsibility. But 12 voted in favor, approving the 20% profit allocation and the operational framework Funmilayo had designed. As the meeting adjourned, Olumide's mentor pulled him aside. "You've changed, Olumide. I'm not sure yet if that's good for business, but I know it's good for your soul. Your father would be proud, not of your empire, but of this moment right here." That night, back in room 12, the space that had hidden secrets now witnessed celebration. Funmilayo, his mother, Blessing, Hawa, and Chidinma toasted with sparkling juice, their faces reflecting something Olumide hadn't seen in months: hope. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now," his mother said, "the real work begins. The foundation launches, the women start their new businesses, and you prove that today's courage wasn't just performance. You prove it through consistency over time, through showing up when it's hard, through becoming the father your son deserves." Chidinma set down her glass. "Speaking of which, he wants to meet you. Saturday morning, if you're ready." Olumide's heart stopped. "I'm ready. Where?" "The park, near my apartment in Surulere, neutral territory. And Mr. Adeleke, some ground rules. You don't show up with gifts, trying to buy his affection. You don't make promises you can't keep. You meet him as a man who wants to earn the title of father, not as someone who thinks biology grants automatic rights." "Understood." Comment below. What advice would you give to a father meeting his 4-year-old son for the first time? As everyone prepared to leave, Funmilayo touched Olumide's arm. "I'm proud of you. Today was just the beginning, but it was the right beginning. Will you come with me Saturday, when I meet him?" "No. This first meeting should be just you and Chidinma and your son. You need to do this without me as a buffer." The thought terrified him, but he knew she was right. Some moments required facing consequences alone. Friday night, Olumide barely slept again. He'd faced hostile business negotiations, pitched investors for millions, built an empire from a repair kiosk. But nothing terrified him like meeting the 4-year-old boy who carried his name and his DNA, but didn't know his face. Saturday morning, he drove himself to Surulere. No driver, no entourage, just a man in jeans and a simple shirt, trying to look approachable instead of powerful. The park was modest, neighborhood children playing football, families picnicking under trees, the kind of place Olumide never visited in his Banana Island bubble. Chidinma waited on a bench, and beside her, holding her hand, was a little boy with Olumide's eyes. Olumide's legs nearly gave out. His son, real, solid, alive. Not just a photograph or a DNA report, but a living child who carried pieces of him into the world. "Olumide," Chidinma said gently, "this is your daddy." The little boy studied him with that unnerving intelligence children possess. The ability to see through pretense and straight to truth. "Hello," Olumide managed, voice thick with emotion. "Mommy says you live far away," little Olumide said, his voice high and clear. "But you're here now." "I am, and I'm sorry it took so long." The boy tilted his head, considering. "Mommy says sorry is just words. She says what matters is what you do after." Out of the mouths of children. Olumide's throat closed completely. He knelt down, bringing himself to his son's eye level, and for the first time in his life, he understood what it meant to be truly humbled. "Your mommy is very wise. You're right, sorry is just words. So instead of saying sorry, can I ask if you'd like to spend some time together? Maybe play football? I'm not very good, but I'd like to try." Little Olumide looked at his mother for permission. Chidinma nodded, though her hand tightened protectively on her son's shoulder. "Okay," the boy said, "but I should tell you I'm really good at football. Uncle Tunde has been teaching me." Uncle Tunde. Of course. Another man had been there, teaching his son skills a father should teach. The jealousy that flared was quickly extinguished by gratitude. At least someone had been present. For the next 2 hours, Olumide played with his son in that Surulere park. He learned that little Olumide loved Puff Puff and hated vegetables, that he wanted to be an astronaut or maybe a doctor, that he had his father's competitive spirit and his mother's gentle heart. He learned that 4 years of life had happened without him. First words, first steps, first fears and triumphs, and he could never get those years back. But he could be present for the years ahead. As they sat on the grass, catching their breath, little Olumide asked the question Olumide had been dreading. "Why didn't you come before?" The truth was ugly. Drunk mistakes, careless forgetting, privilege that made consequences disappear. But his son deserved honesty, even if that honesty revealed his father's failures. Because I made a mistake, Olumide answered carefully. I met your mommy one night, and I should have remembered her, should have asked her name and stayed in touch. But I didn't. I went back to my life and forgot, and that was wrong. I can't change that I wasn't there for your first 4 years. But if you'll let me, I'd like to be there for everything that comes next. Little Olumide processed this with the seriousness of someone much older. Mommy says everybody makes mistakes. She says what matters is if you try to be better. Do you think I'm trying to be better? I don't know yet. Mommy says I have to watch what you do, not just listen to what you say. The boy stood, brushing grass from his shorts. But you came today, and you played football with me even though you're really bad at it, so maybe you're trying. The assessment was fair and devastating. His 4-year-old son was giving him a chance, tentative and conditional, based on behavior rather than biology. Share this story if you believe children deserve fathers who earn their presence, not just claim it through DNA. Chidinma approached, carrying bottles of water. Time to head home, baby. Say goodbye to... She paused, uncertain what title to use. You can call me Daddy, little Olumide declared with the confidence of childhood. But only if you keep coming back. Mommy says daddies are people who stay, not people who visit once. Olumide met Chidinma's eyes over their son's head. Her expression held warning and hope in equal measure. I'll keep coming back, every week, as often as your mom allows. I promise. Promises are easy, little Olumide said, echoing his mother's wisdom. Keeping them is hard. After they left, Olumide sat alone in that park for another hour, watching other families play, understanding for the first time how much he'd missed by building an empire instead of relationships. His mansion in Banana Island suddenly felt like exactly what it was, an expensive prison that kept real life at a safe distance. He texted Chidinma, "Thank you for today, for raising him so well without me. For giving me a chance I haven't earned yet." Her response came quickly. He's a good kid, despite your absence, not because of it. But he deserves a father. Prove you can be one. That night, back home, Olumide found Funmilayo in their bedroom, working on architectural plans. She looked up as he entered, reading his face with the precision of 12 years together. How did it go? He's extraordinary, smart, kind, sees right through bullshit. He basically told me that I'm on probation, that he'll decide if I'm worthy of being called his father. Funmilayo smiled. Good. He's protecting himself. That's healthy. How do I prove I'm worthy? You show up, Olumide. Consistently, boringly, reliably. You show up when it's convenient and when it's not. You show up when he's happy and when he's difficult. You show up when business is demanding and when you're tired. That's how you prove it. The simplicity of the answer belied its difficulty. Showing up required more than money or grand gestures. It required the steady, unglamorous work of being present. Comment below. What does it really mean to show up for the people we've failed? Over the next 3 months, Olumide learned what transformation looked like in daily practice. He showed up at the park every Saturday, without fail, rain or shine, even when board meetings ran late or international calls demanded his attention. He showed up at little Olumide's preschool events, sitting beside Chidinma and her partner, Tunde, learning to navigate the complex dynamics of co-parenting. He showed up at the Foundation's weekly sessions, listening to more stories of displacement and rebuilding. Blessing's eldest daughter returned to school, funded by the Foundation's education program. Huwa's Technology Center opened with 15 students, all young women escaping difficult situations. Chidinma gave birth to a healthy daughter, and Olumide sent flowers with a card that read, "Congratulations on your beautiful family. Thank you for sharing part of it with me." He showed up at Adeltech board meetings with new acquisition protocols that required impact assessments before purchases, ensuring no more blessings or how-was fell through the cracks of corporate growth. He showed up imperfectly, making mistakes and apologizing, learning that transformation wasn't a destination, but a direction. One evening, 4 months after the locked door opened, Olumide returned home to find his mother and Funmilayo in room 12 with 6 new women, refugees from Cameroon, displaced by conflict, starting over in Lagos. "The work expands," his mother said simply. "There are always more people who need second chances." "Then we expand the Foundation's capacity," Olumide responded. "What do they need?" That question, "What do you need?" instead of "What can I give you?" marked the distance he'd traveled from the man who'd signed acquisition papers without seeing faces. Subscribe now, because Olumide's journey is just beginning, and the real test of transformation comes not in crisis, but in ordinary moments stretched over years. 6 months after meeting his son, Olumide received permission to have little Olumide spend a weekend at Banana Island. Chidinma's trust, earned through consistent presence, finally allowed for overnight visits. The first night, as Olumide tucked his son into the guest room, converted from its brief stint as storage into a proper child's space, little Olumide asked the question that would define everything that followed. "Daddy, are you a good man?" Olumide thought about lying, about saying yes and hoping behavior would eventually match words. But his son deserved the truth. "I'm trying to become one," he answered honestly. "I wasn't always good. I made mistakes that hurt people, including your mom, but I'm working every day to be better. Does that make sense?" Little Olumide nodded seriously. "Mommy says nobody is born good or bad. She says we choose every day who we want to be. Your mommy is the wisest person I know. She says that about you, too. She says you're learning to be wise, but it's taking a long time because you started late." Olumide laughed through tears. "She's right about that, too. Can I tell you a secret, Daddy?" "Always. I'm glad you're my daddy. Not because you're rich or have a big house. Because you try hard and you keep coming back. That's what makes someone a good daddy." The words landed like absolution, undeserved and precious. Olumide kissed his son's forehead, breathing in the scent of child shampoo and innocence, understanding that this ordinary moment in a converted guest room, was worth more than every deal he'd ever closed. "I love you, Olumide Jr." "I love you too, Daddy." Later, lying beside Funmilayo in their bedroom, Olumide finally understood what the locked door had been protecting. Not secrets, but possibilities. The possibility that a man could face his failures and choose differently. The possibility that women he'd harmed could find the strength to trust again. The possibility that a child born from carelessness could become a catalyst for transformation. "What are you thinking?" Funmilayo asked, her head on his chest. "That I almost lost everything by breaking down that door, and I gained everything by waiting for you to open it. Do you regret that I didn't tell you sooner?" "No." You knew I needed to be ready to hear it. Thank you for carrying that burden until I was strong enough to share it." She lifted her head, looking at him in the darkness. "Are you happy, Olumide? With this life that's so different from what you built?" He thought about it honestly. His business was growing more slowly than before, prioritizing people over pure profit. His reputation had taken hits. Some circles whispered about his illegitimate child, his soft business practices, his misplaced priorities. He had far less free time, committed as he was to Saturday park visits and foundation board meetings, and learning to be present. "I'm happier than I've ever been," he answered truthfully. "Because I finally know who I am beyond my bank account. Because I have a son who calls me daddy and actually means it. Because I'm building something that will outlast me. Not an empire, but a legacy of restoration." Funmilayo kissed him softly. Then the locked door did its job. It kept the truth safe until you were ready to receive it. Drop a comment below. What locked doors in your own life are protecting truths you're not ready to face yet? The Second Chance Foundation's first anniversary gala took place not in a luxury hotel, but in Hawa's new technology training center in Surulere. The symbolism was intentional, celebrating not in spaces of privilege, but in the communities where restoration was happening. Blessing's repair shop, now expanded into a chain of 3 stores, provided the phone accessories for the event's silent auction. Hawa's students demonstrated their coding skills with a live tech presentation. Chidinma, now completing her architectural degree part-time while working with Funmilayo's firm, had designed the center's renovation. And in the center of it all, Olumide held his son's hand, while little Olumide charmed donors with his questions about technology and space exploration. The foundation had served 347 displaced entrepreneurs in its first year, providing business loans, training, counseling, and legal support. 23 new businesses had launched, including several started by refugees Olumide had connected with through her continued volunteer work. Adeltek's 20% profit commitment had translated to 950 million naira in funding, money that was changing lives instead of just accumulating in accounts. But more than the numbers, Olumide saw the faces. Each person at this gathering represented a story heard, a name learned, a human being seen rather than overlooked. His mother approached, elegant in traditional attire, her face glowing with pride that had nothing to do with his wealth and everything to do with his choices. "Your father would be proud," she said simply, "because of the foundation. Because you finally understand what he tried to teach you. That success isn't what you accumulate, it's what you restore." The keynote speaker was Blessing, her transformation from broken widow to thriving entrepreneur, a testament to what was possible when people were given genuine second chances. She stood at the podium with confidence that had taken months to rebuild. "1 year ago," she began, "I stood in a boardroom and told powerful people about my suffering. I expected pity. What I got was partnership. Mr. Adeleke didn't just write a check. He listened, he learned, he changed how his entire company operates. And in doing so, he gave me back something more valuable than my business. He gave me back my dignity." The crowd erupted in applause. Olumide felt tears burning his eyes, not from pride in himself, but from gratitude that Blessing had survived long enough to rebuild, that he'd been given the chance to be part of restoration rather than just destruction. Hit subscribe Because the story doesn't end here. Transformation is a lifetime journey, and the real test is whether Olumide can sustain these changes when the spotlight fades. After the speeches and celebrations, as the crowd dispersed, Chidinma approached with little Olumide already falling asleep on her shoulder and baby Zara in her partner Tunde's arms. "He wants to ask you something," Chidinma said, adjusting her drowsy son. Little Olumide lifted his head, blinking sleepy eyes. "Daddy, can I come to your house more? Like every weekend instead of just sometimes?" The question hit Olumide like a physical force. In the year since they'd met, their relationship had progressed from supervised park visits to occasional weekend stays. But every weekend? That level of commitment? That integration into his life? "I'd love that," Olumide said, voice thick, "if it's okay with your mom." Chidinma's eyes held the wariness that would probably never fully disappear, protective instinct born from having her trust broken once before. But alongside that wariness was something new, measured faith. "We'll try it for a month," she decided. "See how it goes. But Olumide, if you commit to every weekend, you can't cancel because of work or travel or inconvenience. He needs consistency, not promises that disappear when business demands attention." "I understand. And Chidinma, thank you for giving me chances I don't deserve." "You're earning them," she corrected. "Slowly, but you're earning them." As they left, Tunde carrying baby Zara, while Chidinma held little Olumide, Funmilayo appeared at Olumide's side. "Every weekend," she said thoughtfully. "That's a big commitment." "Too big?" "No, exactly right. You've been showing up consistently, but this is the next level. This is integrating him fully into your life, making space for him not just when it's scheduled, but as a permanent presence. Can you do that?" "Can I not do that? He's my son." "He is. But Olumide, be honest with yourself. Your work demands are intense. International travel, board meetings, expansion plans. Can you truly prioritize him every single weekend? Or are you making promises you'll eventually break?" The question forced him to confront uncomfortable truths. His calendar was perpetually overbooked. He routinely worked weekends, took calls at all hours, traveled for business twice a month. Committing to every weekend with his son would require radical restructuring of priorities. "Then I restructure," he said decisively. "I hire a COO to handle day-to-day operations. I delegate more. I travel less. Whatever it takes." "That's what I hoped you'd say." Funmilayo smiled, kissing his cheek. "You're becoming the man your son deserves." Comment below. What would you be willing to restructure in your life for the people who matter most? The reality of transformation hit harder than Olumide expected. Hiring a COO meant relinquishing control of operations he'd managed personally for 15 years. Delegating required trusting others with decisions that had always been his domain. Traveling less meant missing international opportunities and relying on video conferences instead of personal presence. Every change felt like loss. Loss of control, loss of recognition, loss of the identity he'd built as the hands-on CEO who knew every detail of his empire. But every Saturday morning, when little Olumide ran to hug him, convinced my wife was betraying me. And instead of betrayal, I found redemption. Instead of enemies, I found family. Instead of loss, I gained everything that actually matters. Do you miss it? The old life? The single-minded focus on growth? Sometimes, he admitted honestly. Sometimes I miss the simplicity of measuring success in profit margins instead of human flourishing. But then I watch my son laugh, Or I hear Blessing talk about hiring her 10th employee. Or I see Hawa's graduates starting their own companies, and I remember that the old simplicity was actually just blindness. And the locked door. Best thing that ever happened to me. Not because it was pleasant, God knows it wasn't, but because it forced me to see what I'd been avoiding. It made me choose between comfort and conscience, between empire and integrity. Funmilayo leaned against him, comfortable in silence that had deepened over years of weathering storms together. You know what I'm proudest of? What? Not that you changed, that you sustained the change. So many people have conversion experiences, dramatic moments of revelation. But you've done the hard work of making transformation permanent, of choosing differently day after day, even when no one's watching. I had good teachers, Olumide said, kissing her forehead. A wife who protected truth until I was ready to receive it. A mother who modeled compassion instead of preaching it. 3 women who demanded accountability instead of accepting empty apologies. And a son who taught me that love is spelled Time. From inside, they heard laughter, children playing, adults sharing stories, a family that existed not despite its complications, but because of them. Each person in that room had been broken and restored, had made mistakes and chosen differently, had learned that redemption requires more than regret. It requires showing up. Come on, Funmilayo said, taking his hand. Your mother wants to tell everyone about her latest project, a microfinance program for refugee women. You know how she gets when she's excited about helping people. She gets that from Dad, Olumide said, the conviction that the point of success is using it to lift others. And now she's passed it to you, and you'll pass it to your children. That's legacy, Olumide, not buildings or businesses, but values transferred across generations. They returned inside, where Iya Olumide was indeed describing her vision with animated passion, where Blessing's children were teaching Zainab a traditional dance, where Hawa was showing Malik coding tricks on her tablet, where Chidinma and Tunde were comparing notes with Funmilayo about architecture and urban planning. And in the center of it all, little Olumide sat with his siblings, building something with blocks, creating, destroying, rebuilding, the way humans have always done, the way transformation always works. Olumide joined them on the floor, his expensive suit abandoned for this ordinary moment of presence. What are we building? A foundation, little Olumide answered, carefully stacking blocks. Grandma says foundations have to be strong or everything falls down, so we're being very careful. That's wise. What makes a foundation strong? Truth, his son answered with the certainty of 9 years old. Grandma says truth is the strongest foundation because lies always crumble eventually. So we're building with truth blocks. The metaphor was almost too perfect, but Olumide had learned that sometimes life offers poetry when you're finally ready to read it. Then let's build it strong, he said, adding his block to the foundation his children were creating, together. And in that moment, surrounded by the family he'd almost destroyed, building foundations from truth instead of hiding behind locked doors, Olumide understood what his father had known all along. Success isn't what you build for yourself. It's what you build with others, from the rubble of mistakes transformed into stepping stones for redemption. The locked door had been protecting that truth, waiting for the day he was brave enough to walk through it. If this story touched your heart, hit that subscribe button for more stories that make you think, feel, and maybe even transform. Drop a comment telling me what locked door in your life needs opening. What truth are you protecting, and what would happen if you finally faced it? Remember, transformation isn't comfortable, but it's always possible. It starts with one choice, sustained through 1,000 more, built on foundations of truth even when lies feel safer. Until next time, keep showing up for the people who matter. Keep choosing courage over comfort. And keep believing that locked doors sometimes protect the very truths that will set us free.